Hi everybody, it's Miss Bishop here, bringing you the first video of the academic year to do with medicine to help you with your revision as you get ready for your mock exams. So in our Year 11 baseline assessment, a lot of people really struggled with the John Hunter question. Some people couldn't even answer it at all because they didn't know who he was. And so what this video is going to explain is, as the title implies, we're going to be having a look at who John Hunter was and what did he contribute to our understanding of anatomy and also medical knowledge more generally. This video will also be really useful for year 10 and 11, year 10 and year 9, because by now you should have studied John Hunter. So you'll either be using this video to make notes and pick up some subject knowledge as you go through, or you can be adding bits to knowledge you have already as revision. So while you're watching this video, there are 3 things that you need to be looking out for if this is a totally new topic to you. The first is the roles that John Hunter had throughout his life. These are like official jobs that he had, and the way that he was kind of known within society is one thing that you need to be having a look at. So the second one is books that he wrote and the impact that he had on medicine during his lifetime. Now this one's really important because it's about being able to explain the level of influence he had whilst he was alive. And then the last one is about his innovations, like how out there was he, and what did he do that was so brilliant that helped our understanding of medicine. So if you need to, pause the video now and have a look at this in a little bit more detail. You might want to make a copy of this in your book and then add information to it as we kind of go through, or it might just be a useful thing for you to do for revision. So John Hunter, born in 1728, he joins his brother's anatomy school. He does do quite a lot of birking, that is stealing bodies to use for dissection and an investigation into human anatomy. Whilst he's working with his brother, he is a really popular doctor who specialises in childbirth. A few years later, he leaves his brother's surgery to go and join the army as a surgeon. He leaves again a few years later just to set up a practice of his own in London. After a few years of being a really successful practitioner on his own, Hunter goes on in 1768 to become a surgeon at St George's Medical Hospital, which was one of the most renowned hospitals in the country at the time. He publishes throughout his life lots of different books, which we'll be having a look at in more detail in a minute. But 2 that I've put on here just as an example: 1771 he publishes The Natural History of Teeth, and 1786 he publishes a book on venereal disease, which is another way of saying sexually transmitted infections. The thing that really pinpoints how important he was in terms of society and how well respected is that he becomes a surgeon to George III in 1776. The last really important role that John Hunter has is that he becomes a Surgeon General to the army in 1790. Now that means that he would be responsible not just for the work that he's doing with his own patients, but he would be directing all surgeries taking place with any kind of army personnel. And so it's not like he's the most important surgeon. He's like, well, he is, but he's also training and teaching other surgeons what to do, and he's making the really important decisions about surgery at the time in the army. So there are lots of ways in which you can see that John Hunter's really important in terms of his impact on wider society. So he publishes these 2 really important texts that are really well received and really widely read. But also, in terms of his influence, he's a surgeon at a really well-respected hospital. He's appointed surgeon to the king, which is obviously a really highly respected job. And then he also becomes the Surgeon General to the army. So throughout his life, he has 3 really important roles that he carries out that would mean, like, for us as historians, we can say that we know how influential he was and also how well respected he was. Sometimes that's not always the case. Some of the medical people that you've looked at had really great ideas but weren't appreciated in their own time. For John Hunter, this wasn't true. He wrote loads of really important books, and the impact was seen straight away. Whilst we're on the subjects of books, here are some famous pieces written by John Hunter. You might want to remember a couple and then use them as part of examples to show that you've got really brilliant specific subject knowledge. And the thing that's really important about this when you're referring to him in terms of his publications, what I find really interesting is that he doesn't just talk about one thing. So his first book in 1771 is about human teeth. So it's like dentistry. The second one again is venereal disease. So as you know, that's all about sexually transmitted infections. He has a look at he informs people on observations. So he's looking at different parts of animal bodies to make assumptions. And then the last thing, he's got blood information and gunshot wounds. Oops, drew on it. He's got gunshot wounds. So this isn't somebody who's just specializing on one area of medicine and only ever writing about that. So he's not just writing about wounds inflicted during warfare and then how to carry out surgeries on them. He's writing about a huge range of medical problems that are going to are going to impact lots of different people in society. So you could argue in your answers that he improved the lives of lots of different kinds of people in society, not just one type. So, when you're revising, there are 4 key areas that you need to remember about John Hunter. The first are the books that we've talked about. He helps our understanding of dissection, infection, cancer, circulation of the blood, and really moves forward, not just in one area, like I keep saying, but in lots and lots of different areas. And one thing that's really interesting is the way that Hunter's teaching is really influential in terms of like how much impact he has while he's alive. So John Hunter trains hundreds of surgeons through his different roles in hospitals and as a practitioner and everything else. And so many of those people who were taught by John Hunter went on to make brilliant discoveries of their own. Loads of them went on to set up teaching hospitals. A teaching hospital is where you train medical practitioners to practice. So like you train them into medicine, and his apprentices and students went to go and set up loads of teaching hospitals in the United States, the United Kingdom. And so one thing that you could start to say when you're thinking about his significance and the impact that he had on our understanding of health is that the achievements of John Hunter don't just stop with his own achievements, but you could say that the achievements of his students are as a consequence of him. And so he's really important compared to maybe some people that you might be learning about who don't train that many people in comparison. Another way is that John Hunter is really important in terms of the understanding of scientific method. So Hunter stresses the importance of observation, so watching patients, checking, rather than just going in and acting based on, the kind of teachings of Galen or anything else that it might be, but watching the patient and working much more on an individual basis. He experimented on himself. So when he was writing his book about venereal disease, there was a debate going on at the time about whether syphilis and gonorrhea were different diseases or whether they were the same thing. To have a look at the impact and how it can be treated, Hunter used a sample from a patient that was known to be infected with gonorrhea to have a look at the impact and see how he could kind of experiment and treat it on himself. Unfortunately, what he didn't know is that the patient that he took the sample from also had syphilis, and so he had to go through some really painful and uncomfortable mercury treatments to get rid of the syphilis before he could carry on as a doctor. He did a lot of testing on animals. So because all of the things that he was trying were such they were so new and they were so groundbreaking, he didn't want to test them on people first. So he would try an idea on an animal and then he would try it with a human patient to see if it worked. There are lots of cases of John Hunter saving arms and legs of people who otherwise would have had to have had their whole limb amputated, and that's because of his method of testing on animals and then treating patients with what he found. Really interesting. There's an extra thing. Hunter collected a huge amount of interesting pieces. There are over 3,000 examples of animals that have been stuffed, fossils, diseased organs for other people to have a look at, see what the difference was between a healthy and a diseased organ, embryos and body parts. And he collected all these things together because he believed that it was really important that people studied the body and understood how it was supposed to work. And so this was really helpful in terms of people that came after him. So now it's the bit that you've all been waiting for, and it's over to you with some exam questions. So there are 2 types of questions in terms of very specific to John Hunter that you might get in your exam, and these are 8 markers. So the first one is a compare question. So you can have a compare question that is how are they similar or how are they different. One thing to be really careful of is that you don't cross between one and the other. If the question is a similar question, You can only talk about things that are similar. If it's a difference question, you can only talk about things that are different. Now, I know it sounds really obvious when I'm saying it to you now, but marking Year 11 baseline tests and looking at the FMWs that I've done with my Year 10 classes, people switch over because they start answering the one that they want halfway through when they're panicking. So my advice to you with these types of questions is keep checking back. That last word in the question is the most important. So don't miss out on marks that could easily have been gained because you've answered the question that you wanted rather than the one that you've got. So there can be compare questions between a time period, like the two that I'm just starring here now. They're comparing surgery or kind of understanding with the times of medieval times and John Hunter. That's the one from the baseline assessment if you weren't sure Year 11. And so you can have it with a specific time period, or you can have one that's comparing two different people. Now, I'm not sure if these are going to be contemporary, so around at the same time, or whether they're going to be from different time periods. I don't know. But as an example here, I've put a question for you to have a look at Hunter and Vesalius, because I know that people are a lot more confident with Vesalius than they are with John Hunter. The second type of question is a significance question. So the kind of things that you need to be thinking about here is what kind of breakthroughs did John Hunter make? Who did he impact with what he did? So who benefited in society from his practice? Did he make any groundbreaking discoveries? Did he write any really important texts that people read and made really famous? Did he influence anybody during his lifetime that makes him really memorable? I'm hoping now that you've got some idea of how to answer these questions. If not, email me or one of your teachers to help you. And then have a look through these questions. So the significance of John Hunter's work in the development of anatomical understanding, so that's understanding of how what the body is and how it works. Development of medical knowledge is the second one. And then the last one is scientific methods. Now, all of these have been covered in the video, so if you're finding them a little bit tricky, now would be the time to go back and have a look at them. So well done for watching. I apologise for my terrible drawing, but well done for watching. Really appreciate you giving your time to watch this. If you have any questions, then you can always email me on my school email account, or you can ask your teachers. Don't forget that Tuesdays are intervention days, so we will be expecting you after school if you have any questions. Thank you. Bye.